So welcome, Tamarack Song. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, Jocelyn. It's a pleasure to be here. I look forward to our sharing.
Yes, me too. So I will go ahead and read your bio to introduce you to everybody. Tamarack spent most of his childhood running with wild animals, and as a young adult, he lived with a pack of wolves. There are times during those years when he talked more with animals than with people. Now living in the Nicolet National Forest, his yard is certified wildlife habitat and he manages a nature preserve. He helped pioneer the natural landscaping movement by being the first person in his state to win the legal right to convert his lawn into native prairie and woodland. Out in the woods for at least a short time every day, he says it's possible for nearly everyone to do so, either by converting a part of their yard into natural habitat or making an apartment balcony attractive to birds and butterflies. His goal is to help everyone learn animal language who wishes to, so that they too can look into the eyes of a wolf or just talk with the birds and squirrels outside their windows. Tamarack is the director of the Teaching Drum Outdoor School and the author of books on nature, Zen, native lifeway, and storytelling. He can be reached at tamarack@teachingdrum.org, and you'll find his blog at www.tamaracksong.org/blog. And so, did you want to say something?
I was just going to say thank you. That's a beautiful introduction.
Oh, sure. Thank you. So our topic today, which I'm so excited to talk to you about, is reconnecting with nature by learning her language. And just a short summary to introduce this to the audience is all of nature, the birds, deer, insects, flowers, and trees speak the same language, which keeps them in touch with each other and functioning in synchronicity. We already know this language. It is imprinted in our ancestral memory. By practicing a few exercises, we can get back in touch with it and understand the wild that the animals are saying, and even get close enough to touch them if we wish. So wonderful. So I guess the first question I wanted to ask you is, what is the draw for people, including the attendees of this summit, to learn animal language?
When I'm asked that, and a number of people ask, why bother? We don't really live immersed in nature anymore. Why bother learning nature speak? I can observe the deer; they're beautiful. The birds. I'm a bird watcher. I have a bird feeder in my backyard, or I like going on vacation and seeing the animals, or going to the beach, to the lake shore. This is all well and beautiful. However, when we do this, we are still passive receptors. It's us observing. It's the same as me watching a video. I'm looking at something. It's just rather than it being filmed, I'm seeing it live, but I'm still a passive receptor. And it reinforces the human versus nature dichotomy that we live in, and that, I think, is what causes most of the ills that we are struggling with right now with the exploitation of our planet. We're essentially using our planet as a garbage can. We consume and we dispose of. We consume and dispose of, consume and dispose of, and we don't see ourselves as interconnected with the web of life. And by learning nature speak, which is the natural language you were just talking about, we realize that we are nature. It's not us and nature, but our nature is nature. And when we're involved in the web of life, when we're connected with all that is, all that speaks the same language, we just naturally honor and respect all that's around us.
Wonderful, and so important in our modern society to reconnect in that way. I think we can all feel the pull of it. If we look inside, we can all feel that wanting, but taking the step to do it then. So that's what you can give us some guidance on. So for your own story, how did you learn to speak with animals?
Actually, it's a misnomer to say that anyone can learn it, because we already know it. It's just that we're not conscious of it. There's so much that goes on subconsciously. New research in neuroscience now is showing that 95 to 99% of what goes on in our minds is subconscious or superconscious, if you want to look at it that way. We're just not in touch with it. We're so rationally oriented in Western societies. We think that, well, that's it. We think. I think, therefore I know. Well, most of what we know, we don't think. We intuit. We have ancestral memories. We have impressions. Our sensory perceptions are so much greater than we acknowledge. So there's all of this going on subconsciously. And when we can reconnect with nature, all of this subconscious sense comes out, and the ego disappears. It fades into the background. We become a part of this web of interaction, this web of relationship. And this is what I call the difference between merely existing and living. Because when I'm in a vibrant place, when I'm connected with everything that's going on around me, I just feel alive. I'm not just present. I'm not just a consumer. I'm not just my own identity. I'm something so much greater than myself. And to me, that's what it's all about.
Wonderful. So you say in your book that we have trouble understanding animal language because we watch too many videos and TV shows. Can you explain how that affects us and how that might separate us in the natural?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. This is pretty simple, actually, because what happens when we watch a video is that, or watch TV, is that we become passive receptors. It's the same as we learned in kindergarten and first grade. You sit back and shut up and let the teacher do the talking, unless you're called upon. And what happens is that we just become vacuum tubes. We're supposed to be that way. We're supposed to absorb and then regurgitate. We learn something, we then regurgitate it in a test or an essay or whatever the teacher likes. And the more the teacher likes it, the better our grade. And we can go on to the next level. So we're constantly achieving, we're constantly future projecting, and we're doing that by being passive. The more passive we are, the more accepting we are of what's given to us, the more we succeed in this culture. Well, nature doesn't work that way. It's completely an artificial construct. So oftentimes we take this passive receptor mentality out into the woods with us, or the prairie, or wherever we go out in nature, and we sit there. We want to be entertained. We want this to be a nature show. We want the animals to appear and perform for us.
Right. National Geographic, right?
Exactly. It's the National Geographic Channel, live. We're the camera rather than the camera doing it for us. So we're in the same bind, and it's really a shame, because we go out in nature and we never feel quite fulfilled by our experience with nature, because we have just viewed it. And there's this longing inside of us yet. Oh, I want more of that, or I can't wait till I go back again. Well, we don't have to go back, because we're already there. We are nature. A beautiful example of my book, Becoming Nature, that focuses on animal communication, was illustrated by a woman named Kristen, and she lives in Brooklyn. And believe it or not, she writes a nature column based upon her nature observations in Brooklyn, New York.
Wow.
Yeah. So you don't have to go to Yellowstone or out in the woods or even to a park to observe nature. She talks about everything she sees right outside her 6th-floor apartment building. She goes out on the balcony, and there are birds there. There are swallows and pigeons and butterflies. People have planters out with flowers. Well, okay, the flowers are there and they're beautiful, but she looks closely, and there are bees and butterflies around the flowers right there in the concrete jungle. Mm-hmm. Nature is everywhere. So my encouragement to people is just to be where you are, open up. It's right there. You don't have to wait for that vacation next summer. You don't have to wait for a getaway on the weekend. It's right here and now, both within you and around you.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's true. No matter where we are, as soon as we step outside, we're in nature. Even if we're in a city, we can see the clouds, we can see trees, animals.
You bet. The wind and the sun, the birds flying overhead, everywhere.
Right.
Everywhere.
Right.
And even each other. We are nature.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about relationship.
Very
We're
true.
natural beings. We're animals.
Yes, very true.
Mm-hmm.
And so a little bit more about you, and then we can get into more of your recommendations for how people can connect.
Mm-hmm.
You said that you lived with a pack of wolves when you were a young adult and learned nature speak from them. Can you tell us how that story happened?
Yeah, it was a troubled time in my life. I was in my early 20s, and I didn't care much for our species. I was young and idealistic, and I looked around me and I saw the environmental destruction. It was the height of the Vietnam War. I was struggling in my interpersonal relationships. I had a falling out with my father, and I did not feel very close to those of my own kind. And I had an opportunity to literally live with a pack of wolves. And what happened to me there is that I would bring my dilemma when I went to spend a day with the wolves. I would bring my facade, you might say, to them, because I learned how to get along in this society, and that is to say what people want to hear, act the way they would like you to act, and then you get along with people. And the wolves did not accept that. They saw right through it. Mm-hmm. You know, I wanted to go, I wanted to wear a happy face, I wanted to be with them. I just wanted to forget all my troubles and just be with them, because they were real, they were spontaneous creatures. Well, they demanded the same of me that I expected of them. And that's what created my awakening. I realized that I don't have to be this plastic person. If I need to get along in some sort of a situation, I can do that if I so choose. However, it's my choice, and I can exist in both realms. I can, wear another hat if I want to or need to earn money or get along or whatever, but not lose my essence. Mm-hmm. This is something I learned from my Zen practice as well as with the wolves, because they would call me on any facade that I put up in front of them. They would just look right through it. And I felt invisible in front of them. It was really difficult because I could fool people. I could put on a mask for people. They completely ignored my mask. They related to me as I really was. They just looked right through me. And it's as though whatever I was doing, whatever I wanted, did not matter to them. They were going to connect with the real me. Wow. And that felt so good once I got used to it. And I got accustomed to being that way all the time, thanks to them.
Wow. Amazing. Such an important lesson for all of us, because I think so much of the time we do feel we have to spend with a mask on, for work, for different, getting along with everybody in the family and friends and all that. So we spend so much time with that plastic face, Yeah.
It doesn't work in nature. I mean, we can do it, but we're not fooling anybody.
Yeah.
So it's a waste of time.
Yeah. So what steps do you recommend for those of us who want to start speaking with animals?
The first step is to listen. And I don't mean just listen as in opening up our ears to what is going on around us. I'm talking about deep listening. And that is the way we typically listen. We do it in linear fashion. A plus B equals C. You speak, I listen, and I comprehend it. A, B, C. Well, out in nature, what is occurring communication-wise is more of a web. It's this vast interconnected pattern where everything is occurring simultaneously. I'll give an example. I can look out my window here and I'll see a squirrel. There's a squirrel sitting on the fallen tree. A tree falls in my yard and I leave it lay because there's more alive in a dead tree than there is in a live tree, actually, because of the decay and the cavities. 25% of our bird species need dead trees in order to nest cavities. And what do? We want to create a park out of everything. We want to remove the dead matter. Well, there's so much life there, all the way from fungi and microbes and salamanders and insects, which feed the birds, of course, all the way up to birds, raccoons nesting in the dens, and et cetera, et cetera. So there's all this life there. That's a bit of a tangent, I guess. We'll get back to the example. There's a squirrel outside, and the squirrel is chattering. I can see the squirrel right outside my window. Well, the squirrel's chattering, yes, and I can listen to that. That's A plus B again, and then I can come to a conclusion, C. That squirrel is chattering, and why is the squirrel chattering? If I look up, I'll see there's a blue jay sitting there, and the blue jay is very nervous. Now, why is the blue jay nervous and the squirrel chattering? Well, knowing what I know, there's probably a hawk nearby, because blue jays react very quickly to any predator in the area, and the blue jay is up above twitching her tail. And sure enough, there's a hawk sitting over there on the far pine tree, and I see the other birds getting nervous. There's this whole web of communication going on, and I can, wherever I'm at, I can tune into that, whether I notice the blue jay first or the squirrel first or the hawk sitting over in that open branch. It doesn't matter. They're all interconnected. They're all speaking to each other all at the same time. So if I just listen in this deep sense, I become a part of all that. I become as an organ within a greater organism, functioning as I do, and realizing that all of these other organs are functioning too to create the organism, which is the web of life. Wow.
So just, I guess it has to begin with spending time in nature, right? And just observing and just being with everything, all the beings that are there, right?
Yeah, that you said it right there, being rather than doing. There's nothing to do. Just be, just immerse. And being is not sitting, because then we get back to being passive receptors again. The best thing to do is to be a movement within the greater movement, to walk around, to look, to observe. If something draws your attention, go look at it. Don't focus on it though, but look at it and see how it's connected to everything else. And it just keeps expanding and expanding and expanding. We get out of ourselves. We get out of our egos very easily if we just allow ourselves to.
Mm-hmm. And I noticed in your book, I read your book, or the beginning of your book, Becoming Nature. I meant to say that title earlier. I apologize for not stating that earlier. But in it, I noticed that you have such honor and respect for the other beings. So you're, capitalizing their names like wolf or deer or tree. How does that sense of kind of respect and reverence play into Native American beliefs, or just a general connection with nature?
Yeah, this is something I learned from the elders early on. They talk about the trees and the bears and the butterflies as being their kin, their sisters and brothers. And this isn't just some empty platitude. This isn't just some spiritual belief for them. They mean it, because when we're living indigenously, living as our ancestors once lived, and even not so far back when we were still farmers, we were intrinsically connected with the land. We did not just go to the supermarket or open up the refrigerator to get some food. We grew this food, we harvested this food, we processed it. It was real. If we ate meat or fish, we went out and caught these fish, and we realized that these animals have lives, they have families, they have relationships of their own. These are real beings with purpose and sense and vision of their own. It's not just me and all of this is commodities for my consumption. No, these are animals in relationship. These are plants in relationship. So naturally, I would capitalize, if I'm writing about them, I would capitalize their names, because they are very important. It's not just another word. It just comes naturally. In native languages, I see all the time when the native languages, which are not written languages initially, when they are converted to some sort of an alphabet to be recorded, the the indigenous people will just naturally capitalize the names of the other animals, birds, even the plants, even the clouds and the wind. It's all capitalized.
Wow. It's beautiful. It's just a part of their perspective.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which is conveyed in the language. One thing the elders told me is that the culture is embedded in the language. If we want to learn about another culture, especially a native culture, an indigenous culture, just learn the language and it's all there.
Wow. So I noticed that you wrote in your book that bird language is silent. And I think most of us think of birds as pretty noisy, like just chattering and tweeting.
Yeah.
So what is the bird's silent language, and how can we learn more about that?
Oh, this is beautiful. Most of us have this awareness already that language isn't just verbal communication. It's body language, it's facial expressions, it's what we wear, what we choose to wear, how we stand. There's so much more involved in language. The same is true with birds, and maybe even more so because we are so focused on the verbal language of birds. We can hear them oftentimes and we can't see them.
Mm-hmm.
We learn bird songs for people who are interested in birds. And with bird song, you can very easily distinguish whether it's an alarm call or whether it's a territorial call or a defensive call or whether they're calling for their mates. It's not too hard to do. And actually in the book, in one chapter, I show how to do that so that we can recognize what the birds are saying if we can only hear them. However, the real communication here is silent. The bird's vocalization is just the tip of the iceberg. If you've ever seen a robin's nest in a park or outside your window, or a pigeon's nest on your ledge if you live in the city, it doesn't matter, and watch those birds and watch what they're doing. If they have young, for example, you'll see that the female is staying close to the young. The male has a perch close by, watching, playing guard, and you'll watch them as the young get older. They feed them more and more, and you see them flying back and forth, going out to get food and bringing it to the young, or nest building, or whatever they're doing. It's their movements that communicate. It's their body language again, the same as with us, that communicates so much. So their language is very complex. However, they speak it through their beings, their sense of being, through their movements. So if we can just observe, just listen again, it's this deep listening, watch how they're interacting with their environment again, the same as the example I gave with the squirrel. Now we're learning their language.
Wonderful. Can you explain what you mean by the animal mind?
Yeah. This is actually, it's nonverbal, so it can be explained only so much in words. But this is what I was referring to earlier about 95 to 99% of what goes on with us mentally is subconscious, and this is what's occurring in the animal mind. The animal mind is called our limbic process, if you want to get technical. There are our frontal lobes, our rational mind, and then there's our limbic process, which is our deeper mind that physiologically exists beyond our frontal lobes. And that is the seat of our long-term memories. It's the seat of our processing of our feelings, our emotions. And this is where the real synthesis occurs, the synthesis of our ancestral memories of what we were born with, of our sensory input, of our long-term memories, because we're creatures of habit and pattern. 98% of what we do is, you might say, knee-jerk reactions. We use the same 500 words when we speak over and over. We might have a vocabulary of 10,000 words, but we automatically use these same 500 words all the time. We don't have to think in order to speak. And this is very handy, actually, because if we had to process every word we spoke, communication would be very laborious. So there's this animal mind that takes care of all of this, and we don't have to be consciously troubled with that. Our rational mind is available for making the decisions we need to make that are unique, the unique decisions we're making all the time. For example, if I'm crossing a busy intersection and I'm stepping off the curb, I have to do some immediate processing there. Here, I can't just rely upon my long-term memory.
Right, right. Interesting. So now you write in your book about and this is to quote your words, a complete communication system that is largely unknown to modern humans. So I guess the idea is that this is ancestral to us. This is intrinsic to our nature to have this communication system with other beings, with nature. So how did we lose this ability? Because I know, like, I have young kids. I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old daughter, and I know they have this, and especially when they're younger, they have this. So what happened to make us forget along the way?
Oh, this is a beautiful question, Jocelyn. I'm glad you asked it. Have you ever noticed, well, I don't have to ask you this question, but the rest of the audience, have you ever been with children and just observing them and noticed that they're talking with something or somebody and you don't see anybody around? What are they talking to? Who are they talking to? Or they might have toys and they're interacting with these toys, these what we think to be inert pieces of plastic, but they're carrying on conversations here.
Yeah.
They hear things that we are no longer able to hear. They are communicating in ways that are completely natural if we lived in a natural environment, if we led natural lives. What happens is that oftentimes our parents at a very young age say, "Oh, that's silly. Who are you talking to?" And we go to school and there's more of it again. Don't get distracted, Oh, we're going to send you to a counselor, and you're probably going to be diagnosed with ADD or ADHD, and we'll give you some medications so you can settle down and sit and do what you're supposed to do and focus. So what happens is that this extrasensory perception, you might say, ends up atrophying just for lack of use. That's all. It's still there. It just has not been exercised. And it's there and it can be awakened. All it has to do is be exercised again. We need to start listening, deep listening, as I was saying, rather than just focus on this one voice. Sit back, open up, and start listening, and our senses will come alive again.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to share a short story about that, I had, we were just driving along and my 2-year-old was in the back seat and a bird kind of swooped down and flew right next to her window. And she said, "Oh, mommy, look, a bird." And she said, he's my friend, and,
yeah.
Very sweet and a very natural thing, She knew it. It was a fact. He's my friend. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
So you have a choice there rather than dismissing that and say, "Oh, that's just a 2-year-old fantasizing." Listen to that.
Yeah.
Your child means it.
Right.
That this is your child's reality. Yes, and encourage it. You bet.
Yeah.
In fact, one thing I do with people, with students and other people I work with, or just with counseling, when people get so stuck, when they get so tight within themselves and don't realize that there is a greater world around us, it's all about relationship, I encourage them to spend a half a day every week with small children. Just be there. Do the deep listening with small children. Yeah. They are our teachers. They've got it.
Yeah, so true. So very true. One thing that I thought was very beautiful in the way you express in your book is that you compared the idea of becoming nature to using our imagination. So how are those two things similar?
Yeah, becoming nature. Nature is all about imagination. There's a constant creative process going on there. We become accustomed to doing things in a certain way, in a certain linear way. If I want to go to the grocery store to get some food, I'll get in the car. I know how to do this. Get in the car, stick the key in the ignition, drive down these certain roads and go to this certain place. And my favorite foods are always at the same place on the shelf, and I just go through this rote pattern. There's nothing really imaginative about it. Oh, I can see something, maybe, oh, there's a new flavor here. Maybe I'll try this or something. That's really not being imaginative. in nature, every step is imaginative, because I'm not just walking down the sidewalk or up a set of steps that I'm familiar with. I have to be present and aware with every step, or I'm going to trip pretty quickly. This is off the trail. If I go out into the woods, I have to be present. I have to use my imaginative powers in order to be consciously integrated with my environment. Here again, it's all about relationship. Whether it's relationship with that root I might have tripped on if I wasn't there, if it's relationship with the animals and plants around me, relationship with my own inner dialogue. I have to be present. And this is what imagination is all about. And the only reason we call it imagination is because in our culture, so much is so rote, it's so predictable, that anything outside of this rote realm seems to be imaginative. We're designed to be imaginative. We can be imaginative all the time.
It's a lot more fun to be imaginative than to just stick with our same routine every day.
Yes, this is what I call being human rather than just existing, being fully alive and engaged.
Alive, yeah, definitely. You mentioned in your book, I thought this was so interesting, that you teach feather reading. Could you tell us a little bit about that? I had never heard of that before.
Yeah, here it is again. Feathers speak a story. It's just amazing. We have a year-long wilderness immersion course here, and I went out to meet with the students one day, and one of them had a feather, and asked, "Oh, whose feather is this? Where did this feather come from?" And we sat down and we spent the rest of the afternoon unraveling the story of this feather.
Wow.
Yeah. Just by looking at a feather and reading what is there on the feather, you can tell whether the feather is from an immature or an adult bird. You can tell how well nourished the bird was by signs on the feather. Mm-hmm. You can tell how the bird was killed, or if the bird was just molting the feather. So there are all these clues that can be gotten from just one feather. This feather is telling a story. So I call this skill feather reading. Mm-hmm. And it's just, I wish I had a recorder there just to show people what could be done, what can be done just by what we think as so simple things. Oh, we pick up a pretty feather and we bring the feather home, and my partner Letty wears feathers for earrings, beautiful earrings, and those feathers tell a story. They're not just ornamentation. They mean something to her because she found them in the woods, and if people ask about the feathers, she will sit down and tell a story about them.
That's wonderful. Yeah, as I said, I had never heard of that. I didn't realize you could find so much information in a feather. That's beautiful. So for our listeners, many people may be in metropolitan areas and, or not feel they have the time or the opportunity to connect with nature. So, you have spent so much of your life in nature. How long do you think it would take somebody who's not yet, to that point to learn how to do it?
My first suggestion would be to forget about the goal orientation. To think that, if I take a 3-month course, I will get there. Or if I read this book, I'm not speaking against these things by any means, but these are just tools. These are just accoutrements. We need to recognize that we are already there, and we just need to open up to it. There are a couple of suggestions that I can make that will facilitate that process. One is, with the feather, for example, if you see a feather that attracts your attention laying there, you've taken a walk in the park or just on the sidewalk, bring the feather home, set the feather beside your screen, and this is going to be a reminder. This is a connection, and that story is going to keep coming back. I have some things on my desk here. I have stones and feathers, and a lot of which you can't see on the screen here. But I'm looking at 3 owl feathers that I picked up the other day right outside my window here.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I will, to take a break from writing, I'll take a look at one of these feathers, and I'll start reading the story in the feather. And the story of this owl who was perched outside my window 3 nights ago starts materializing. It starts coming to life for me. So this is a mental exercise. I can do that right here and now in front of my screen. I don't have to go out into nature for that, because I bring nature inside and I bring myself outside into nature. So I'm breaking down that boundary, that dividing line between the two. Household decorations, we all like to personalize our environments. Bring some of nature inside. Hang it around. Houseplants. Rather than going to a greenhouse or getting some houseplants that were probably from the tropics or something, bring in indigenous plants, wild flowers, dried flowers, just anything. Branches. You see a branch that has a beautiful design, an old branch that fell out of a tree. Bring it in and incorporate it into your internal decor. And I see behind you, I see a seashell, for example.
Mm-hmm.
If that's something you picked up on the beach when you were in Florida, for example, that this is a reminder, and this keeps us connected. This keeps us related.
Absolutely. Wonderful suggestions. Well, we are getting near the end of the interview time. So I did want to let the Summit audience know that you are offering to 3 people a complete set of your published works. And that's so generous. Thank you so much. So there are, let's see, looks like 7 or 8 books included. So for anyone who's listening, who's interested in that, you can go to Tamarack's page on the Summit website. If you go to the main schedule page and click on his image or his link there, it will take you to his dedicated page. And from there, you'll be able to see how to get to his website, how to get to Amazon to look up any of his books, and then also the link to enter for this free gift. So, and all of his books are available on Amazon. So if you go to Amazon and type in Tamarack Song, you'll be able to see all of his different writings. So Tamarack, thank you so much. This has been wonderful speaking with you. Thank you for your time. Truly appreciated.
Well, thank you, Jocelyn. It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure sharing some of my life. Thank you.
Thank you so much.